Story 7. Horrible Secret. Posted on September 21st, 2021. Today, I present to you the 7th part of the Fat Tinkerbell series. The following is a true story experienced by the author. All characters are still alive and kicking to this day. Recap. On the last story we talked about how Fat Tinkerbell was learning more and more about RoboCop. Especially from the people surrounding her because she would not interact with RoboCop himself. We had established that she had a crush on him and thought he was evil at the same time. We also have an understanding that RoboCop as a manager follows the employees around the maze. Follows Fat Tinkerbell more than any employee because Harry Potter wanted RoboCop to watch over her. At least that's what Fat Tinkerbell thought. Also, RoboCop stares at Fat Tinkerbell down while inside the office, like if he's trying to read her mind. She had learned about how this man might possibly have children at the age of 25 to 28, which was devastating to her. She had learned that he fought physical fights with past employees and kept his job as a manager. And she learned that RoboCop tends to flirt with female sellers and workers of the maze, although he'd do it when nobody is there to see him do it. And that he'd tell his male soldiers underneath him not to do it, while he went and freely did it himself. Overall, this RoboCop man was beginning to sound like an awful person. Regardless, Fat Tinkerbell was intrigued by him. His looks, his traits, his qualities, his personality. Truly a one-of-a-kind character. He was truly a catch. Moving on. In this next story, Fat Tinkerbell ends up learning something about RoboCop that is devastating to her. Something that breaks her heart in two. But let's begin this story. Horrible Secret. As the days went on in the maze, Fat Tinkerbell was already used to most of her co-workers there. With her weight and her size, it was challenging for her to walk for hours at that job. She had to patrol the premises of the entire maze. Thankfully, the soldiers were being rotated from driving to walking every hour. That way nobody had to be on their feet all day. It was a very simple and very tolerable job with little to no workload. Fat Tinkerbell, after about a couple months, was loving that outside job at the maze. But more than anything, she loved that the king at her job there was a handsome rich man. And that one of her direct leaders was hot RoboCop. There was two good things to look at. Finally! Not every job has many handsome and hot men in it. Anyways, as Fat Tinkerbell continued her search for more info on RoboCop, she had already spoken with and met many girls that knew of RoboCop but never really knew him as a friend or something like that. Many young females of the maze saw him as he passed by on his soldier motorbike. But nothing more than just that. A lot of people Fat Tinkerbell befriended said that when they see him pass by, that he looks all angry, that he never smiles. That he never is friendly to anybody. That he doesn't talk to them. Etc. Fat Tinkerbell during this time was beyond curious to find out if the RoboCop was married. If he's in a relationship, single, gay or straight. If he actually has 3 babies or is a father at 27. All of that good stuff. Fat Tinkerbell knew nothing. Fat Tinkerbell was dying to find out about this hunk of a man. It seemed that he wasn't speaking to any of the females there, or flirting or whatnot. So far at least. Although to Fat Tinkerbell, RoboCop actually looked like the type to be flirty. To be single, to be having fun. He looks like a player, like an F-boy. He looks like the perfect womanizer. What one would call a man whore. His physical appearance, upfront behavior, his body language. Everything about him showed that he was indeed that type of playboy. In fact, that type of so-called bad boy. He was hot and fit. He was cute in regards to his facial look. He had a jawline like that of an army soldier. He had the attitude of an army soldier. He had beautiful lips. He was serious in his behavior. He was demanding and upfront. He was fearless. He had large forearms. He had muscular arms. He had large veiny hands. Long fingers in relation to his hands. He was militant in his demeanor. He had a deep voice like that of thunder. Thick black eyebrows in an angry shape. He had guts to just stare you down without a second thought and judge your entire life. He seemed to be afraid of nobody. You could smell the manliness and the testosterone radiating off of him. You could tell that this man was getting all kinds of ass, all kinds of girls. That's the type of impression this man would have with anybody and everybody. I've explained many times in previous stories the effect RoboCop had on a girl like Fat Tinkerbell. Fat, unattractive Tinkerbell there. An inexperienced, lonely, single girl like her, more than anything. Fat Tinkerbell was an introvert, and an unamused type of girl at that. Even with her hideous body and her hideous looks and her weight. She was never impressed by any other guy ever. Not like that, and to that level. She's never before met a one-of-a-kind character like him before. He was literally one of those chads that people refer to. The hot ones, the ones that get all the girls. In definition, a sexually active male, a particularly attractive, confident male. That's exactly what RoboCop is. RoboCop impressed her. The feelings he was causing her to feel. New emotions he was generating inside of her. Feelings unknown to her before. Romantic emotions of different kinds, each a different flavor to the other. Around that time, it had been hot, sizzling summertime. Each and every day felt like you were breathing in flames and being tormented by the heat of the sun. Especially there in that tropical peninsula where Fat Tinkerbell lived. Scorching desert heat and being forced to wear that uniform that I previously talked about in previous stories. The top hat, the tie, and the boots. Ridiculous uniform for an area like that. But Fat Tinkerbell had no choice. None of those soldiers did. Not even Harry Potter or RoboCop. They were all there, having to put up with the outdoors environment and the uncomfortable uniform. But out of everyone, RoboCop and Weed Guy were rocking the uniform unlike everyone else. Point of all this is, Fat Tinkerbell at that point was associating scorching desert heat with feelings of excitement Mr. RoboCop was causing her. It was an exciting time for Fat Tinkerbell. Extremely exciting. Never before had Fat Tinkerbell felt enormous amounts of excitement and joy to wake up every single day in her boring house and make it to that job on time. Be working at that job more than anything. And that job specifically. From who in the world do you hear that they are excited to go to work? Who in the world wants to wake up early every morning to make it to work on time? Who on earth says, "I work today, how exciting"? Effing nobody. The type of attraction Fat Tinkerbell had for RoboCop was making it so that she'd feel pure energy and excitement to be at work. At that job specially, to just see him every single time. To be followed by him and have him stare at her like he always does. To hear his deep-ass voice. To look at his large back, shoulders, and large forearms. To look at his black, thick eyebrows. Black, thick, masculine, threatening eyebrows. Now she truly feared being fired or removed from that job. She doesn't want to miss any opportunity to be with RoboCop. He was one of a kind. Moving on. So yeah, Fat Tinkerbell had to wonder if actually, she's not the only young lady that feels impressed like that by him. If maybe other girls have a crush on RoboCop just like she does. There is no way that only Fat Tinkerbell, out of all the girls in the entire labyrinth, is completely obsessed with RoboCop. No way at all. He was the only male so far that she'd gotten a crush on, and to that level, to that density. A pure sexual attraction that was brought on by his looks and behavior. It was almost male-like, it was an animalistic type of attraction. It wasn't an "I've fallen in love with RoboCop," or "I've found the one." It was an "I want him to bang me, ASAP" type of attraction and feelings. It was nothing Fat Tinkerbell had experienced before. There must be many young ladies who are interested and are completely hypnotized by RoboCop just like she is. There must be young ladies around her very same age, 20 to 21, that actually went ahead and slept with RoboCop. The ultimate goal, the ultimate prize. All the young ladies that worked there were all attractive and fit. They looked like high school schoolgirls. Fat Tinkerbell looked like an old aunt because of her weight and lack of self-care. She never in her life before felt so insecure and out of place. Her unappealing looks were beginning to haunt her. Which is also a reason why she'd avoid RoboCop at every point of meet. Why she'd turn the other way. Why she'd rush out of that tiny office like she hated him and everyone in there. It was in hopes that nobody noticed her at all, especially him. So yes, there was suspicion that many other girls liked RoboCop just like Fat Tinkerbell did. RoboCop was very similar to Danny from that one movie Grease. It was almost a no-shit type of answer. Of course, all the girls are gonna want the hot guy at school or work. Actually, it's a pretty simple no-shit answer. Of course, every guy wants the hottest girl in school. Of course, all the girls want the hottest guy in school. Of course, everyone wants a Lambo, Tesla, Bugatti, BMW, Mercedes-Benz. No fucking shit. Everyone always wants the best. It is a shallow, superficial way of viewing relationships and people, but it's also natural and biological. Women tend to seek mates that are strong, fit, and healthy. Males that are capable of protecting the females and her offspring. Males that are strong and healthy who can produce strong and healthy children. And so, Fat Tinkerbell was now experiencing this animalistic drive firsthand. For the first time in her life. All happening subconsciously. It was weird, it was frightening. There actually was several times that she'd question herself as to why. Does she crush on that rude, vile, mofo at all? She questioned herself so much as to why she'd even want that man whatsoever. Someone not worth it. Not worthy of any love. Someone who's a bully, who teases people, belittles people. Is believed to be sexist and known to fight people. Why? Why? It drove Fat Tinkerbell crazy each and every time. Anyways, moving on. One day Fat Tinkerbell enters what we'll call the help center. This help center was like a little shop-looking area. Usually, working in there were these gorgeous, hot, college girls. We could see Hispanic-type young ladies, or young ladies who were American. Looking like the typical white, hot, college chick. There was a good variety of beautiful young ladies in this help center. Fat Tinkerbell didn't think much of the people in there, because she barely passed by that zone. In fact, most sellers around the entire maze looked all pretty and like Barbies anyway. But moving on. Later on as time went by, Fat Tinkerbell ends up befriending some of the people that worked inside this help center. Mainly because she'd have to work with them directly, or help them out. In general, it was obvious that the soldiers of this maze worked hand in hand with the help center. Not at first though. At first Fat Tinkerbell was nonchalant about working there. She could care less about anything at all, and she'd mind her own business. Later on as time went by, it was that she noticed that they both cooperated with each other. The soldiers and the help center. So as Fat Tinkerbell got to know that help center, and as time went by, she had befriended this one older lady of that help center. We'll call her Mrs. Help. Mainly because she was like a manager in there. Mrs. Help was a laid-back type of person. She was always friendly and talkative. She enjoyed being a gossip lady, and Fat Tinkerbell loved to hang around with her because of how fun of a person Mrs. Help was. Over time, as Fat Tinkerbell and Mrs. Help became friends and talked about the universe, the stars, and the planets, suddenly the subject of the hot RoboCop pops up in the conversation. This time Fat Tinkerbell wasn't the one initiating that subject or topic. Usually Fat Tinkerbell was the one to go around and ask about RoboCop to the shop sellers around the maze, but she never thought about mentioning it to the help center people. The help center people dressed more professional. They dressed for like a fancy get-together at a serious job firm. So Fat Tinkerbell really wasn't into the idea of talking about Harry Potters or weed guys or RoboCops with the help center girls. She actually just passed by and was friendly to them. Regardless, fast forward to now. This time, Fat Tinkerbell was thrown off about how someone in this help center was now talking about hot RoboCop and initiating it. She was completely taken aback by the mentioning of this character. She felt the most intrigued, the most curious she's ever felt before in her entire life. Butterflies surrounded her brain the moment someone brought him up. Finally, it felt as though she was going to get more info on this one character. Some true answers. Mrs. Help says to Fat Tinkerbell if she's met that one manager, the one who looks real good in Fat Tinkerbell's job. The one who's fine as F. Fat Tinkerbell then immediately realized that Mrs. Help was talking about RoboCop. Also, Mrs. Help seems to be all flirty while mentioning RoboCop on top of it. Mrs. Help was almost a 40-year-old woman. So after this, Fat Tinkerbell and Mrs. Help begin an entire conversation about how RoboCop is a bad boy. About how he is manly and follows people around. Everything and anything they've both known about him. It was the most amazing, most fantastic moment for Fat Tinkerbell. She's never before felt so curious and excited, all at once. It felt as if she was winning a prize. After that night, Fat Tinkerbell knew exactly who to go to for info on RoboCop. A couple weeks went by, and Fat Tinkerbell kept meeting up with Mrs. Help at the help center. Soon, Mrs. Help lets Fat Tinkerbell in on a secret. She says, "Did you know that one of these girls slept with RoboCop?" Fat Tinkerbell's heart sunk into her stomach. She responds with, "Oh, really?" Acting all surprised and curious, instead of angry or broken in the inside. Mrs. Help tells Fat Tinkerbell that it's with one of those cute college white girls that work inside that help center with her. Fat Tinkerbell never in her life felt so incompetent, so left out, so unappealing and so unattractive. That very moment, Fat Tinkerbell felt the most depressed, the most shattered she's ever felt in her life. Hearing this news on RoboCop also confirmed his player, womanizer appearance. His bad boy persona. It confirmed the idea that he's basically one of those chads. It now felt like truth, or that it was a fact. It was now basically a reality that RoboCop indeed and undeniably is a chad. It also made it clear that Fat Tinkerbell isn't the only one drooling over the hot, tough, alpha male of the entire maze. Just like she thought, just like she assumed. Fat Tinkerbell's overall idea of the type of person RoboCop really is, was coming to life and being confirmed left and right. Suddenly, when remembering what Mrs. Shorthair previously in the previous story said about RoboCop actually being a father to 2 young children, wasn't so far-fetched. That idea started to sound like a reality. It was more likely that this Chad was a young teen dad than if he wasn't. His frown-like serious expression of always indicated frustration. His large veiny hands indicated that he's had to do difficult heavy-duty jobs throughout his life. And why? Because he likely has children to feed and care for. Fat Tinkerbell was now going through all these facts about this one man she hasn't even spoken with, not once. Soon, this RoboCop character was beginning to not sound that dreamy any longer. The fact he had children is already a downside, a con. Learning that he slept with a hot college chick from the maze means that he clearly isn't with the mother of his children any longer. Also, it is likely that he cheated on the mother of his babies because of his Chad-like behavior and persona. Behavior of an immature Chad. He probably cheated on her with some other hot college chick. Just assumptions that point to the obvious. Fat Tinkerbell felt such disappointment with that character. She also felt at a disadvantage as well. She couldn't believe that the only man who's ever truly tickled her love bone is some no-good, insatiable Chad, alpha boy who isn't worth the trouble. Fat Tinkerbell started to visualize, in a reality where Fat Tinkerbell wasn't extremely obese and overweight. Where she was considered one of those sexy, young, college girls, one of those Barbies. If she was to flirt or be with that RoboCop guy, he'd end up breaking her heart. Cheating on her and mistreating or disrespecting her. Basically using poor, lonely, insecure Fat Tinkerbell like a blow-up doll for his sexual needs. Just like how he used that mysterious hot college chick at the help center. Also, when remembering about how some soldiers told Fat Tinkerbell how he was believed to be sexist. That belief isn't too far-fetched either. It's more likely that hot RoboCop is unbelievably sexist. That he thinks little of women. That he deems women useless and incapable. This also reminded her how RoboCop went and snitched on her without a second thought, the first few days she was new there from the first story. It reminded her how he played that sick prank with the lost phone, making her see some vile, explicit, animal abusive content by the second week of being new there. Fat Tinkerbell basically began connecting the dots. Putting things together to finally realize that RoboCop is a vile, evil, demonic person. Someone who can't be trusted. Someone who'd go out of their way to degrade and belittle a Fat Tinkerbell who needs more help and training than anything. Now that Fat Tinkerbell learned that the RoboCop is a womanizer for real, and being exactly what she thought he was, it was more than likely that he'd been banging many other maze chicks. Just like she thinks he does. It was clear that Fat Tinkerbell had just not heard of them yet, or been aware of them yet. Anyway, there Fat Tinkerbell stood, in the middle of this enormous maze. At around 8 p.m. at night, beautiful shops selling from side to side, beautiful people selling all around. Delicious smells of food coming from every corner, music playing from every corner. The hundreds of guests just buying and consuming everything. And Fat Tinkerbell feeling like someone pushed her off a cliff, and her heart in pieces. The end. Well guys, that was the real-life true story written by the author of Horrible Secret. If you haven't read the previous stories, I suggest you do so in order to understand the characters and the storyline. Share this story with whoever needs it. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and please let me know in the comments below if you've ever experienced anything like this with your hot boss. If you've seen behavior like that from anyone in your life. If you've ever crushed on your boss or your own bully. Just leave your thoughts on this whole situation down below in the comments. You can find me on BitChute under the same username. You can also find me on DeviantArt under the same username. My second YouTube is EmyyWolf Productions. Also, you can find me on Facebook, Controversial Corner. All links in the description here, and at my channel.